What's going on, guys? I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pivotal Conversations. We are officially in 2021. Where the fuck did 2020 go? That's all I'm asking. Crazy. You're probably talking to the most sunburnt guy in the world right now. Fell asleep at the beach literally on Boxing Day, reading books and just kind of enjoying myself and forgetting that I'm part Scottish, 50% Scottish, which, that should probably sit in my head when I go to the beach and make me realize that no, I'm not one of those people. And to those people out there, fuck you, that just tans, just straight away, no burn, straight to tan. And anyway, this is not your problem. This is not your problem. Really cool episode coming up for you guys today. Industry insights. We're talking fitness technology and how it will play a massive role in the transformation of business models in 2021. I've posed a question to you guys. I think that, stay tuned for that. If there's one thing you stay tuned for, it's Killian Hamilton. If there's another, then it's definitely this question, because I think if you answer this question about business model, based on the insights provided in Industry Insights, I think you're going to be a very successful business owner in 2021 and make a lot of progress. We then talked to Killian Hamilton, the boy wonder from Prescript, the up-and-coming killer, in a sense, I would say. He's a very, very smart individual. He's the Director of Innovation at Prescript, who's obviously one of the most fastest-growing businesses in the fitness industry right now. So it's really cool to have a chat with him and talk about his journey, but then we also dive into some pretty cool concepts around time and some of the mindsets he's held around time and money and monetizing time, which I think is probably one of the biggest lessons you've got to learn in business. And we talk pretty deeply about that and kind of even myself go into some of the metrics that we track to help you guys manage some of that time. Which is, it's a really cool conversation, guys. So just, as I said, stay tuned for that. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And then the arena, we talk a little bit about white lies and some of the unsustainability and the lack of foundation that it creates for sustainability in business. So a lot to look forward to there from an episode perspective. Before we jump into that, we have the Business Mastery Program. The next intake is launching January 18th. We actually only took on 2 intakes in the second half of last year because we're at capacity. So some spots have opened up officially, which we're pretty excited about to bring some new faces in 2021. But this is what I like to call our business coaching program. So this is the only offer that we have where you can go through our full education process, right? So or education journey, which is basically taking you through our pillars and our concepts in order in an accelerated fashion. Usually you have to wait for intakes and do course by course. This is the only option that you get where you get all of that in order in an accelerated manner. And that order is to specifically help you scale a business. And then we combine that with business coaching. So really experienced business coaches who have done what you're trying to do. And that's scale a business, create autonomy, and really find freedom within their business. Which is, and continue to grow, obviously, with, from a revenue perspective, but also a legacy perspective. So, if you're somebody who is at the point where you're either ready to scale your business and you've reached a ceiling, you can't seem to break through that ceiling, you're time poor and you kind of want to take it to the next level, or you're somebody who's ready to scale, you're at that point where you just go, I really want to accelerate this thing and make 2021 my year, then this is something that's going to be, it's going to be something that will dramatically help you. We only take on 5 people at any one point in time. It's very exclusive. We want to manage quality and we want to make sure that the 5 that come in absolutely crush it. So that's really important to us. As I said, guys, this is our business coaching program, which, in 2021, we're taking it to a new level. We're adding new things. There's a lot of different perks in there as well, such as a private podcast and, an extra 70 hours worth of business content on top of our short courses. you're getting access to an alumni, which is fucking extremely high level. Like, it's crazy, some of the businesses and business owners we got in there at the moment. And it's only getting better and better as we add, new people like yourselves into it. Okay, so January 18th, that kicks off. Keep an eye out. Head to our website. There is an application process. Not everybody gets accepted, I will say that. So that's just a little heads up. But as I said, it's really exciting, and we're pumped for 2021, as should you be. As should you be. Hopefully we get on the back end of COVID and we start to really start to make some progress there. But I'm not holding my breath. All right, guys, up next, industry insights, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, so industry insights. What is happening? What's the insight for 2021? Now, we are literally in the fit tech age, in a sense, is how I want to put it. Over the next 5 years, you're going to see a really dramatic emergence of technology-driven fitness services, right? And I just think that I'm not really talking about the going live on Instagram with your shirt off, six-pack douchebag online fitness coach, the laptop lifestyle kind of thing. I'm talking about we're starting to see big business really start to enter the sector. Companies such as Apple, Barry's Bootcamp, and there's many more that are really starting to drive into the online space. One, because they have to, yes, I understand that, right? But they're really starting to enter the space of fit tech, right? In a sense where they're using technology and going online with the way they're delivering their service. And that's kind of the big move, right? I want you to understand that when institutions really start to move into the space and they really start to push into a space and start to deliver some type of service in that space, that means that there's going to be dramatic innovation in that space, right? So this is a sign, right? And this is a sign that I think as individual business owners, right? So if we really start to look at okay, what does this mean for the small dog? What does this mean for us, the small people, the small business owners of the land, right? I think what you'll start to see is that this means that you have to move extremely quickly, right? You've heard me talk about production, right? So, I've mentioned a few times on this podcast that production is going to be really important. So the quality of your camera, the quality of your production when it comes to producing media. The other thing that's going to be extremely important over the next 5 years that I think you guys really need to start to focus on in 2021 is the year that it's going to happen, that transition. And I think if you're too slow to move, you're dead. I think you're already gone. I think you may as well pack up your bags. You're just going to be someone who's time poor and busy, and that's not the fucking goal, right? But the thing I want to really emphasize here is that business model is so fucking important here. Right? Innovation is upon us. To the consumer, how we deliver our service matters more than ever. You've got to think about it. Apple Fitness, all of these companies going online. The thing that's going to matter the most to the consumer is how we're actually delivering it, right? So, is it frictionless? Is it easy? Is it high production? Is it quality? Is it premium? Right? And then on the other side, as a business owner, your business model is about to go through a transformation, right? So you have to start to think about both sides of the pie. To the consumer, it's about quality, premium, production, how we deliver our service matters. To us, it's about going, okay, well, how many big box gyms are going to be around in 5 years? I'm not sure. My prediction is they're going to go downhill, right? But what this is going to start to mean is that more than ever, we're going to start to move into this online space, but it's going to be about the business model. How do we deliver it? Can we leverage something like Kajabi to deliver our service and create courses for onboarding, to deliver videos? Is there some type of software that's going to come out that's going to allow you to combine something like a Kajabi and a Trainerize, where you're delivering education at the same time as Trainerize, or are you just simply doing both of those? Like, the business model is so important now, and especially because there's an opportunity on the table for many business owners with the acceleration of technology to actually start to make those changes to business model. I just think that it's really important. So my question that I pose to you guys, right? The question that I pose to you that I think if you answer this in 2021, you're going to have an extremely successful year. So pay attention and think about this deeply. How can you leverage media and technology to create a more scalable and frictionless business model? How can you leverage media and technology to create a more scalable and frictionless business model personally to your business right now? Answer that question and then go fucking crush 2021. My interview with Killian Hamilton is coming up next. Stay tuned. All right, guys, I'm sitting here with Killian Hamilton. He is the up and coming superstar from Prescript, who is taking the fitness scene by storm at the moment. So, for those of you who don't know him, some of you may, but I want you to just give yourself a bit of an intro and tell everyone a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so my name is Killian Hamilton. I guess most know me as the Director of Innovation and Programming for Prescript and Prescript Canada as well in the coaching position. And then I run my own coaching and consulting company called K2 Performance Coaching. We offer one-on-one consultations, remote coaching, and a mentorship program as well for S&Cs and up-and-coming remote coaches.
Awesome. Awesome. So, brother, what I want to do is I want to dive into your journey within the fitness industry because I think, like, um, most of the time, man, when you start to gain some traction or at least make some serious progress within your career, people only see the surface, right? They only see where you're at right now. So, I'd love to gain a little bit of an insight into your journey through the fitness industry and kind of how you've gotten to where you are right now.
Yeah, man. Well, I think like you're so right, and everyone always goes like the overnight success took a decade, right? And it's very true a lot of the times, and I think that's very true of myself. Like, obviously, I've become relevant in I guess this more global sense, this more online sense, within the last 10 to 11 months. But I've been working in the fitness industry now nine and a half years. From working in commercial gyms to doing small remote coaching to meeting shallow and becoming an educator, and then really diversifying like the online offerings I have. But I started back applying to a commercial gym in 2011, 2012. I knew how to lift myself. Like I was competing in powerlifting at the time, and I didn't want to work a regular job. I wanted to be in a gym all day, and I thought personal training seemed like an easy sell. And you learn really quick that it's not. So yeah, I got a job as a personal trainer at a big commercial gym. And back when I started, it was very much, the boiler room esque, numbers gain of gaining clients where you're, just kind of like pounding the pavement and booking as many consults as you can a week and sitting down with people and taking people for a 20-minute workout, using neuro linguistic programming on them, showing them a $10,000 price, and then, overcoming their objections and hopefully they give you their credit card. And it was just rinse and repeat and do that day in and day out, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Man, I know that so much, and that's so truthful. That there's so much truth to that, right? I think like the NLP that made me laugh because it is really, especially when you're getting into it and like your skill set's quite low, like you're pretty much relying on the fact that you can a little bit about psychology and you can kind of see where this conversation's going and the right time to wrap it all up and ask for the sale. And it's interesting, right? Because you start to rely on that, and then a lot of like, as I said, because there's a lack of skill set, you're the reality. And something I kind of want to talk about this a little bit because something I did hear you talk, I can't remember what podcast it was, but maybe it was the hybrid podcast where you were all ripping on Jordan. That
Oh
was,
yeah.
maybe it was that one, but, and you were kind of talking about how it's quite the opposite now with yourself, right? Like you do things on your own terms and you work on your own terms. And I love the way that you put that because I think that that's probably the biggest learning for myself along the way as well, right? Is like, I've gone from doing the 40 sessions a week, like same as you, 5 a.m., 9 p.m., grinding my ass off to give myself the ability to build the skill set, along the journey, actually having money to invest in myself. And then the ability now to, I'm very much the same, where a lot of my day is probably doing what we're doing now. And then, I'm at a stage now where I probably only deal with, maybe 3 or 4 people a week, and the rest is, outsourced, and we've got a team built and these kind of things. But it's really interesting that you kind of go through that, and the very start of your career is grinding and doing what you can to build that skill set. But now and then I want you to give a little bit of an insight into that philosophy of, working on your own terms. And, you know, when you give yourself 3 hours to 4 hours to do something, usually you'll get it done.
Yeah. I think it's funny too, right? And I think for most people, when they read self-help books and they read business books or they listen to business things, you can get lost in almost the lost profit of the idea. It's like, I do nothing all day. I do things when I want to do them. But like, there's something to be gleaned from that as well, as almost the play on words. It's like, I do things when I want to do them. Well, to be honest with you, I want to make money. So primarily what I do is try and make money. And I think people need to not neglect the idea of having control over your day for not doing anything with your day. And in that being said, like, I didn't quit a 9 to 5 job for a big business to work my own 9 to 5 on my own. Like, I didn't quit for financial reasons. I quit for freedom and for creativity. So the first non-negotiable I had when I went off on my own was that freedom to say, like, I prefer to work out at 2 p.m. Like, that's the time I train. The first thing I wrote in my schedule is when I was going to go to the gym, and the second thing I wrote in my schedule is when I was going to read, because it's the two things I always found got pushed to the side when I worked for a big business, was training and reading when I wanted to. So I was like, those are the first two things that go on my schedule. And I built out a schedule around that to say, you know what, I have a block of time. You can start to curate blocks of time. You can start to see these periods and blocks in time in your day. And you go, well, I have 4 hours here. Like, how do I number one, organize that 4 hours? And two, how do I directly monetize 4 hours? And for me, it was understanding when I had no business. Like, I started with 2 clients. I have 47 clients now. My business has changed dramatically, but I looked at it as anything that wasn't directly monetized was business development. Anything that was directly monetized was work. And I wanted to work more than I developed the business. So I had to find ways of monetizing all hours of my day. And that's where I started to develop what offerings I would have. Was, I need to monetize more of this time. I can't I can't disguise going on Instagram for business development. Liking people's photos is not business development, right? So it's understanding that was the first thing I had to understand, was create blocks of time visually, then organize the blocks of time, and then monetize the blocks of time.
It's really interesting. I think like one of the biggest takeaways from that for me is like freedom is a choice, right? Like I think a lot of people, like that's the word that I get the most, is like if I'm sitting down with somebody and I'm like, hey, like, and we're trying to develop their business and their business skills, it's like, what's the first thing that comes out of their mouth is like, oh, I want freedom. And it's like, yeah, I think like the mistake people make is kind of them thinking that they don't have it already, right? And it's like, it's just it's a way of thinking, in my opinion. Like you said, it's like because and it resonated deeply with me. Was Ask Shallow, like whenever me and him hanging out, like the first thing I do in the morning is read for 3 hours, and I'm just writing notes. And it's because like me running a business gives me that choice, and it's understanding that especially when it comes to building skill sets and educating yourself and reading these self-help books and so on. It's like a lot of the time I find that people are reading for the sake of reading, and then that is the exact reason why they're not prioritizing freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the same concept, right? So I think like the thing that resonated most with me with what you just said then was like you wanted freedom, and that's the reason you chose to leave the 9 to 5. And most people don't understand that, is that it's sitting right in front of their eyes. They just have to change their way of thinking and their mindset around it. It's a really interesting concept when you think of it that way, because I think that in itself would, we talk about making money, right? Like the only, like the limiting factor in business for me, and I kind of tell everybody this, is it's always time. So whether it's, whether it's your own time, like even myself, now the limiting factor for me is my team's time, like I'm always trying to find more time and create more time, find more leverage in a sense when it comes to the business. So I think and a lot of it comes from that mindset. We recently just released it's called business offense in a sense, but it's all around creating more leverage continuously. So what strategies can we use to create more leverage? But as I said, a lot of this stuff just starts in the mind. So where do you think you got that mindset from? Or is it like a philosophy that you've drawn upon, or is it something that just kind of it's been with you do you think you got it from working that 9 to 5?
I think I had it. I think I had it before I worked the 9 to 5. And like growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money. Like when I was a kid, I would all of my clothes until I had a part-time job were secondhand clothes. All of the groceries were basic groceries, bread, rice, Cheerios, whatever. And I was like, I remember when I got my first part-time job, I got a job immediately when I could get a job. And the first thing I did was go to the mall and I bought new clothes at a clothing store. The first thing I wanted was clothes no one had ever worn before. And I realized like there's nothing rewarding about the possession of money, but there's something rewarding about the freedom that having money brings you. It's like, I don't need to buy clothes, but if I needed to, I could. And it's like, like you talk about having leverage, or I use the phrase like having bandwidth, and being monetarily stable is an ability to extend your bandwidth, because it's not something that's in the back of my mind ever. I'm never like, we're sitting here right now, I'm not thinking how much is my rent, when is rent due, what are my bills? I don't think. They just come out and I'm okay. And I think the driving factor for me in finding a way to monetize all aspects of my life came out of growing up without money and understanding like, if I could never think about money again, how it would just be a different lifestyle. It wouldn't be better because my life was great, but it's like, it would just be different. What is the difference? And then when you get a job like you and I have both had in a commercial gym, where it's incentivized to build your own business, and you're surrounded with two people who are successful, and you're surrounded with people who go, I've been working at the gym all day, but they haven't been working because it wasn't directly monetized. Like they got to the gym at 6, they had 2 clients. It's now 8 p.m. No, you worked 2 hours, but you've just been in this building. Now there's no amount of structure or constraint that you can apply to that individual that will make them successful, because they're physically in a building where all of the money exists within the building, and they can't simply walk over to somebody and ask for it. So I realized when I was constrained to a basement of a mall commercial gym, that it was like, man, I'm going to be here till 9 p.m. I'm trying to get paid for every hour. Like if I'm going to be in here for 16 hours, like why don't I just get paid to be here? I never want to do anything for free in my life. So I think it came from the fear of having no money, which I think is something me and Shallow hold very close to our hearts. And 2, it came from, I never want to do anything for free.
Yeah, I think everybody has that close to their hearts. I think,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, or not everybody. Like, that's probably not true. But I mean, I know that for me was something like from the age of 18, man. Like, I was out of home. Like
Yeah.
on my own. I started a business without even knowing I started a fucking business. You know what I mean? Like, I remember like I was at university studying marketing, and I was like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, it's funny because I'm in business now, and a lot of people tie business with marketing, but I was studying marketing at university and I just did not want to do it. And I was like, okay, so what do I want to do? What do I love? And it was like, okay, I love the fucking gym. That's probably what I could do. That's, effortless in a sense, right? Like I could do this all day and work, ridiculous amount of hours and I can still probably love it. So I got into that. And the thing for me about that was like, the reason I got into that was because it was something that I loved to do, right? It was like I needed to get into that because it was, there's something that tying that together for me was like, okay, when I got into the gym, when I got to that 9 to 5, when I got out of that kind of my version of 9 to 5 was university. It was like one of the quickest things that I learned there was that, okay, I was there I remember my first day, I was there from 5 a.m. and I left there at 8:30, right? And I was like, okay, I didn't make any money today, right? And that was like, that clicked into my head and I was like, okay, holy shit, I've got to kind of pay rent, right? Because like at that time, as I said, I just moved out of home. And that for me was like one of the scariest days of my life. Was like I've been there the whole day, I didn't get paid, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna look this word up in the dictionary. Business. Okay, yep. Okay, so I'm not guaranteed a wage here. And
Yeah.
then I remember that's probably the first lesson for me that was like, business, there's no guarantees anymore, right? And that was like, that was scary. And then the second time was, and this was pretty wild at the time, but I'd probably had some success. I think it was the first time I earned six figures as a coach. And I, same thing, I was like, to you going to buy the clothes, it was like, for me, I was like, to be honest, I don't know whether this was something subconscious, but I wanted to like live closer to my mother. And like, I keep following her, like it's weird. But I wanted to move to this suburb because I thought, like, I actually sat down with my stepfather at the time, who's kind of really, he's like ex-military. So he's kind of really into like self-development and like next level. And he's like, what success look like to you? And for some reason, I had this suburb in my head. Anyway, so fucking probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. But I wanted to move I had, 40 clients at a gym, wanted to move to this other gym in this other area, which was probably about a 45-minute drive. So just think about that. And this is me being young, went and signed a lease in this area after getting promised by one of the gyms, because they were like connected gyms, that they would take me on and I would be able to pay like half rent, right? So I'd pay full rent as like they called it like a passport. And that was kind of like, it was like a handshake agreement, right? Anyway, went and signed the lease at this other place in that area, which I think was like, at the time, I was paying like $400 a week in rent, right? Got to the other gym and they're like, nah, sorry, dude, like you got to pay double rent. So like that worked out to be, I think it was like $1,100 before I got to see a dollar. Like that's not including like tax and everything, man. And that same week I lost my license. So like, not only am I living here, which is 45 minutes away from where my business, like my core business is, which I've got all my clients, and then I lost my license and I've got to try build my business up at this other place because I've just signed another 12-month agreement. And like, I think every day for 6 months while I didn't have a license, I was up at 3:15 in the morning. I would catch a train and I would get to my other gym where my core business was, work there from 5 till 12, catch the train back, work from there to build my business up to like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then walk home, and it would take me an hour. I'd get home at 10:30 and I would be straight back up. And I did that for 6 months. And like, I look back in that now, and like, to be honest, that's probably like, for me, that was like the biggest lesson ever. Cause it showed me two things. It showed me that like, it's probably not going to get any worse than that. But it also showed me that I do not want to ever be put in that situation again, where I first of all fear, like I have to literally, I felt like man, like every day was a fucking grind. But it was like, it just showed me that like, if I want to monetize and make a true business out of this, then I can't just sell my time like that. Like, and you know monetizing hours for me was great, but it's like, it also showed me that there's no way I'm spending my whole day in a gym doing this all day. No matter how, like, I love coaching people, but damn, that was like the biggest lesson in the world for me, was that. And so they're probably the two biggest lessons when it comes to like fear around money, but also understanding that, the time for money scale in my head, like that was always going to be the limiting factor. Like, and that kind of is like, my mindset now is that, the limiting factor in any business is always time, whether it's my time or my team's time. So how I can leverage my time better and kind of monetize it better is always going to be the thing that gets me the most growth as a business owner.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And like I speak to that all the time. Like time is my most expensive commodity because of the fact that I left a business in which my time wasn't valuable, right? Like where I was on the hook for 12 hours a day and whatnot. And when you do in-person training, the thing that people don't see is like you're working the hours that no one else is working, which are the hours that you don't want to work. And on top of that, if people don't show up, you don't get paid. And I can't be sitting there waiting for, I don't want someone else to have control over how much I make because I know how hard I'm willing to work. And it's like, I'm willing to work these 12 hours, but if no one shows up, it's no fault of my own. So I would rather be, I would rather be put into the position I am now where I can look at a day planner and I can take a highlighter out and go like, can I 3X, can I 4X, 5X, 10X my business if I just take this yellow highlighter to all this empty time on this one day? And that's also an obstacle that you run into when you start to have a successful business on your own, because like you and me, and I think a lot of people who get into this, like you said, like you chose this because you're passionate about doing it. And I think there are people who are intrinsically good at selling things, or running a business or selling themselves, and they just have to have a product put in front of them that they believe in. For you and I think it was fitness, and I think that is tied in some ways to some type of caring principle for other people. We want to establish a better quality of life at first through fitness, and then now I think for you and I it's through the health monetarily of people's lives. So in looking at that, it's just this idea that you sit around and you have like a semi-successful business where money, like an X factor of money, a figure number wasn't what was in your head initially, and you get to a point where you're comfortable, like I don't have to think about what my rent is. But then the motivation almost drops off the face of the earth because I'm like, well, I'm comfortable now. I can pay my rent. I got Versace flip-flops and I'm good for another 24 days. But where the motivation comes from is looking at that empty day planner and going, but I'm not doing anything for 6 hours today, and why not? And for me, my biggest motivator is just to be the best at anything I do. Like I just would like to be the person that's the best. There's no fixed criteria because the best changes. It was Michael Jordan, then it was Kobe, then it was LeBron. Well, the best will always change. So I just want to always be in conversation with the best. So for me to look at a Friday afternoon and say I have no appointments booked, well, what can I do to monetize that time? Because there's somebody else out there who's doing it, and someone's going to call them the best because they are now more visible than I am. So I want to be in front of more people.
This kind of just makes me like, hanging out with Jordan and kind of that's kind of the one thing that I guess similarities, right? And kind of hearing that is like music to my ears because it's, you know, as I said, my days now, uh, a lot of it's there's no bookings, right? Like but the reality is I'm probably still working the hours I was working, you know, 5 years ago when I was, busting my ass in the gym. And it's because of that, like at the end of the day, sitting around for me, it's like I still love what I do, and I actually fucking don't. For me it's harder to sit around and do nothing, like, because I'm just like I don't fucking enjoy doing that, you know what I mean? And it's just, and then there's also that intrinsic motivation, right, that has come probably for me. uh, there's actually a few books that probably changed that for me, but also a combination of that and some other practices. But I would say that the intrinsic motivation there of being the best or being in that conversation is something for me that's like, there's not I much prefer my days to be full, and full of what is the kind of is the question I'm always asking myself, right? Is how can I, we talked about it before, how can I get that 3, 4, 5x? How can I start to spend my time, just like I would invest money to get, when I'm picking a stock or something like that, right? It's like my ability to choose my ability to choose what gets me the best ROI is based on what I did yesterday, right? What I learned yesterday, right? So how can I spend my time to get the best ROI? And like that's led me to continuously chase my passions, because the things I'm most passionate about are probably the things that are going to get me the biggest ROI if I spend my time building my skill set, my knowledge around that kind of aspect, in a sense.
Yeah, and that's like it's a big thing for me, and a big thing that I talk to people now about is understanding your offerings at the time in which you can offer them, and right, and it's as you build a business, like understanding, like you said, the time money trade off is when you want to start to 5x or 10x a business, or whatever it may be to make it exponential, is you have to understanding that your time, it's a sliding scale of the monetization of the time. When I had 40 hours available, that time was, because of the supply and demand, was really cheap. Like I just needed to make rent money. That time was cheap. Well, now I have 3 hours remaining. That time is more expensive to me on a personal level. So I want to fill it with a product that is more monetarily viable. But in order to do that, I have to come up with a product that I can service to create that value. So it's not like I can just go, the same service is now $1,000. Well, no, I have to now have an offering that is within that range if I want to then grow my business again, right? As your leverage decreases, you can charge more, but if you charge more, you still need to, progress yourself. You need to, I guess, level up, if you want to use cool words.
It's really cool. We've got a metric that we track with all clients, and it's something that we kind of teach in our course as well. It's called leverage growth rate. And basically what it is it's kind of like a formula. It's intrinsic hourly rate times hours worked
Yeah. I
plus
believe the same
plus
thing.
expenses, right? And then divided by revenue. And basically it gives you this scale, and you can literally get a gauge on how much leverage you are either gaining. But the best thing about it is that intrinsic hourly rate. Like, the whole thing is it's subjective, right? It makes people actually question their value on time. Like, it's so fucking crazy the amount of people we put this in front of, and they're like, well, I don't understand this. They're like, so are you talking about what I charge as a PT? And I'm like, no, I want you to fucking question every single day what time is worth to you, because I can guarantee all you need to do in order to actually, like, if you wanted to improve that scale or improve um like what that number, in a sense, all you literally have to do is increase your value on time, right? So but as you increase that value on time, you now have to filter how you spend it, right? And that's the biggest thing. When we sat down and we're like, okay, like, we think that the key to scale is leverage, right? So if we can teach people the concept of leverage through, in business terms, then we can, once they're at a point of scale, if they understand how to navigate their way through business with this mindset, then they can continuously grow their business. And I was like, okay, the biggest thing here is value on time. So we're going to put an intrinsic hourly rate, and we're just going to fuck with your head, right?
Yeah.
So that you understand and can start to filter the way you spend your time. And it's really interesting because a lot of people really have trouble with it at the start. But, as you start to track it, you understand that as long as my value on time increases, right, then I start to filter the way I spend it. And that's literally the key to scaling a business, because the more time you spend on things that are only going to get you an ROI of X, right, then the greater that your business will be able to scale. So it's a really interesting, how we got there with this conversation. But, I think it just does, it kind of does emphasize the importance of how you spend your time, and then the correlation that has to the I guess the income that you can generate.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like I was having a conversation a few weeks ago with somebody, and I was saying like I used to do like 1 hour consultations with people if they just had questions, they wanted to run through a program or run through their own clients like case study, and I was charging $100 an hour. And I realized with where my business is at now, I'm like, I honestly do not need that $100. I
Yeah.
really don't. And the person I was talking to was like, hey man, like you should never say that because one day you're gonna need the $100. And I was like, listen, if I'm at the position I'm at now and one day I'm gonna need $100 fucking dollars, I made some big fucking mistakes. Shame on me. Like if I can say right now that I don't need $100, I should never be in a position in the future where I really need it. because I should be moving my business at a scale and leverage and pace that I can leave that behind. And it's not to say that I don't value what that person needs, but the return on investment of me taking an hour away from something else I could do is probably not beneficial to either of us. And I realize that when speaking with clients, because I need to charge a rate. And I tell this to everybody that I consult with. You need to charge a rate that motivates you to pick up the phone if that person calls you. Because if you look at it in the finance world, people in finance are motivated to pick up the phone when their client calls, when that client has massive leverage in the market. The less leverage the client has in the market, the less motivation that broker has to pick up the phone. And that's the thing, is for clients who want more of me now in terms of FaceTime or in terms of contact, they need to have more leverage in the market, which is my business, so that I'm motivated to pick up the phone at 3:30 a.m., that I'm motivated to work past 6 p.m. or put down a book that I'm reading to pick up that phone and not do email check-ins, but do Zoom check-ins, right? So I think it's understanding your business in the same way. And I've understood now that clients have different needs and there's a sliding scale to the leverage that they have over me. Therefore, that leverage needs to be monetized accordingly.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, like I'll go back to the start, right? It is a dynamic beast because your relationship with money has so much to do with your ability to, charge a certain amount, right? So, but I definitely think it's important for people to understand that, you're it's this intrinsic hourly rate. Like I just can't, I can't emphasize how important this is, right? Like it's like the intrinsic hourly rate is that leverage, right? And it's like if you don't consciously understand what that is, or you're not focusing on it, or whatever, it can be extremely hard for you to make those decisions, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to charge this person this amount. It's like, yeah, but you're only looking at it at the surface, right? You're not looking at the second and third order consequences that come with that kind of, I guess, that value on time, right? And I think it's one of the biggest lessons that you learn, and probably for me, it's one of the most important, is that understand, it's the same thing, right? Like I kind of sit there now and I don't do consults. Like, you'd be amazed at the amount of people that reach out to me and they're like, hey man, I just want a 1 hour consult. And I'm like, I don't do them, right? Because guess what? If I do them, you don't understand what I have to charge you. And is that 1 hour actually going to benefit you in the way that you think it is? Like, most people are like, yeah, I just need 1 hour. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You really don't. Like, business and a lot of the things that we're teaching, 1 hour, you think that like in my head, I'm like, you think that I got here in 1 hour. Do you know what I mean? Like, but that's the kind of thing. And I just think, like, I get it. I do get it, because people are probably looking to get certain information and these kind of things. But for me, yeah, I just, like, it's for me, it was the biggest lesson. And it's like that intrinsic hourly rate for myself keeps going up, but it keeps going up because the more that intrinsic hourly rate goes up, I know the more valuable my business is getting. Right. And that's where, we look at the different strategies that you can grow your business, whether it's through leveraging technology or whether it's through leveraging, human capital in a sense, right? Like people come bringing in, building your team, even just the concepts that you're teaching, right? Like how well are they understood, because the better or the more digestible you can create or make a concept, right? The quicker it is for somebody to learn, and that increases the value as well. So by me increasing my intrinsic hourly rate, and it's not something I just keep bumping up, right? It's like, it's something that, continuously over time changes based on the growth of the company, and obviously, the dynamic way that the company is growing. But that intrinsic hourly rate does play such a large role in one's ability to make progress in business. So with yourself, right, man, because obviously you've seen some pretty astronomical progress over the last year, right? So what's one piece of advice that you would give, or some advice that you would give to somebody who's up and coming, in the industry as a coach, especially with your experience over the last 12 months? But I mean, probably over the last 10 years, right? But like, what you've seen over the last 12 months.
Um, you know what? In a lot of ways, it's visibility, and I want to explain that a little bit more. Like I get, I get visibility and therefore capital and credit from being friends with Shallow and from being on this podcast with you. You know what I mean? Like sitting around with like a couple of the goats. Like I obviously get the visibility through those channels very much so, but everyone has visibility in front of them that they neglect, and it's from not being visible on social media. Like people exist on social media and I don't know they're there. Like if there's one thing you notice about me is I never post to my feed ever. Like once a month I'll put a post up, but every day I put 5, 6, 7, 8 stories. Everybody who watches my story, I'm in the first 4 stories they watch every day. I'm one of the first faces they see when they wake up, one of the first faces they see when they go to bed. I don't need to exist in the feed, I exist in the story, and my temporal level of visibility is high. Now that's leveraging the capital I've already acquired. That's capital I have. These are followers that have already said yes to me once. I'm getting a second yes. Now, in that story, if I offer a service, that's the third yes. Anybody here knows NLP, then you understand I got the 3 yeses, I gain a client. And people neglect the visibility they already possess. And a big thing I see right now, and I saw this in the commercial gym setting and one-on-one as well. It's not just a social media thing, but people are marketing themselves and building visibility as if they were to influence a third-party product, not as if they're the product themselves. And it's understanding like if I want to market this protein powder, I'm just going to get my face out there every day and I'm going to talk about this protein powder and everything that it does. I'm going to read the nutrition facts. I'm going to mix it in a shaker cup and every day I'm going to put this on display. Well, you're the protein powder and I don't need to physically obtain you to get the value from you. But if I follow you and you post the 5 best squat tips, how to program, how to squat, how to lunge, how to eat, and every day you post some high valuable content that I don't have to pay for, that I don't have to in some way donate back to you to get, then inherently you're marketing a business as if you're marketing a third party product and not if the product is a service. And really what you should be doing is you should be asking questions of people that stimulate them to pay you the social capital following you. And then for those that follow you, answer your questions in a story that exists temporally and at a high volume and frequency, in which you're constantly getting these subjective yeses from people daily until you finally ask them a yes that matters. And I think there's just people out there that they're not capitalizing on the visibility they currently have. They're trying to create greater and greater visibility before they create engagement. Now, I would rather be the greatest influencer with the smallest footprint than the worst influencer with the biggest one. Like I have 4,000 followers. On any given day, 400 plus of them will like a post, watch a story, participate in the Q&A. And of that 400, 51 of them pay me monthly on a recurring basis. It's a pretty good conversion rate on social media, for which I participate 1 hour or less a day in. So I think people neglect the engagement they have with the people in front of them. And that's something that's no different than what I saw in a commercial setting, right? Guys would be in the gym, and they'd be sitting in the lunchroom, or they would go out on the floor. And this is the greatest thing. I remember this when I worked at a commercial gym, is people would go prospect for new clients and they would approach the most unfit, scared, hesitant person on the gym floor. I would walk out and approach the biggest guy in the gym, because I'm going to approach the fit person because they've already bought in. The barrier to entry to start talking to them about being more efficient at something they love is low. To talk to someone who's out of shape, scared, has no idea what they're doing, and probably comes once a month, that person hasn't even bought into showing up. They're not going to buy into giving you any more money. It's the same thing with people on social media. Don't try and get a new follower who hasn't paid you anything. Engage with somebody who's asked you a question in every Q&A you've put up, liked every one of your posts. Reach out to that person. They keep telling you they want to talk to you. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Oh man, like I'm going to cross over into business, right? Like kind of deeper strategy business with this. It's funny, man. Like most people, like if you ask any trainer, any coach, like 90% of people will tell you that the biggest problem about their business is leads, right? It's like, hey, what's your biggest problem? It's leads. And it's like, no, that's the symptom, right? Like it's, So the real and kind of something that we talk about is, when you, at any one point in time, you've got your own human capital, your own time and monetary capital to spend to get an ROI. And most people spend their time, or what they think they're spending their time on, but really it's probably more just their focus is pre-purchase, right?
Yeah.
Which is like everything pre-purchase, but they're forgetting about the golden nugget, which is post-purchase and purchase, right? So, these are kind of your different touch points when it comes to your brand in a sense. But, and this is where I see it kind of crossing over a little bit, but a lot of the time when you spend your time focusing on post-purchase, right? So if we look at, what you're talking about on visibility and we're kind of more talking about social media, you've got pre-purchase, which is probably somebody who's not following you. And then you've got post-purchase, which is somebody who's already said yes, right? You put the time and effort into that post-purchase and start to reallocate your focus, your human capital, your time and your monetary capital as well. That actually creates your pre-purchase, right? So, if we actually look at what grows an Instagram account or anything like that, it is that person who's already said yes. Like they're the only person who can actually create that virality, that share in a sense, right? Like, that's how you're going to grow at the quickest rate is if you can share something. And it's the same with business, right? Like if you look at at the fundamental of what grows a business, most people, and I'm going to try cross this over. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it well, but it's kind of margin for me, right?
Yeah.
Like, margin's that term. It's like if I spend all my time on pre-purchase, I'm cutting into my margin, right? And it's the same thing. It's like, think about the difference between getting a yes from somebody who's already bought in compared to getting a yes from somebody who hasn't, right? So, you going up to the guy in the gym who's the biggest dude and working on him, like it's probably going to take you less time to win him over, right? So that's margin. Whereas if you're spending time trying to win over the person who's, you know, uh, they're scared, like they're uncomfortable, like it's going to take you so much more time. So when it comes to that example, time is your margin, and it's the same thing in business, right? It's like if you're spending all your money on pre-purchase, well, that's what we call advertising, right? So the best brand in the world is Tesla. Why? Because they spend $0 on advertising. So the way brand is Latin for margin, right? The better your brand, the more margin you're gonna have within your business because you don't have to spend money on pre-purchase on your advertising. So kind of for me, that's where my mind goes when you say that is like, there's a lesson there, and there seems to be a pattern, right? Is that the best brands in the world focus heavily on purchase and post-purchase, right? So they streamline the sales process, or maybe that is a consequence of having a better brand where, there's a big difference between sitting down and having to sell someone for an hour for say a $1,500 price point and then clicking a button now. Like that's the beauty of technology, but putting effort and focus into post-purchase and purely improving the product or service will actually generate a lot of free marketing. And that is, when we look at brands, one of the things we teach in brand is that if you can reallocate your capital, both monetary and human, into putting focus into just simply improving the product, right, which is post-purchase, and making that product something that sells itself in a sense, and then creating evangelists, right? That's the move that we're looking for. That creates that free marketing. So it's interesting you kind of talk about that with visibility, because straight away my mind goes across the business, and kind of something that we teach is that, we're in an industry, unfortunately, where business is taught by marketers, and it fucking kills me, right? Because, the reality is the one thing that keeps getting more expensive, and like what you're saying, right, is that if you're always focusing on more, before kind of putting that focus into the people that you've got, a lot of the time it's going to get more expensive, right? So, and that's probably what we're talking about there, is that most people are focused on getting more followers, more visibility without focusing on the people that you're already visible to. And that's a lot in business as well, is that, the people that are saying that leads are their biggest problem probably just don't focus enough on their product or their service, right? Because if you can get a product and a service to a level and you focus heavily on that, the innovation around it, the messaging, the brand, all of these, just the service itself, a lot of the time that'll take care of your pre-purchase for you. So it's a really interesting, I guess, crossover that happened in my mind just then. But it's so true, man. And I think there's a big lesson in that. All right, so I want to cross over to philosophy now. This is kind of just a question. This is something that I wanted to jump in and ask you. Is there 2 or 3, I guess, philosophies that you've read along the journey that have had the biggest impact on you? Is there like 2 or 3 that come to mind that you could say that truly did change the trajectory of you as an individual? Not just in business, but in life.
Yeah, I think the first one, I think I mentioned it on a podcast I did with Shallow, but one of the first things I heard, I just, in a life principle, I think you could cross this over to anything if you really wanted to, is my uncle asked me when I was young if I wanted to have $1 million. He was like, do you ever want to have $1 million? And I was like, yeah, of course. Who wouldn't want $1 million? It sounds amazing. And he was like, okay, stop spending money. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, if you just stop spending, you'll accumulate it. You just got to stop spending. He's like, but if you keep spending, you could possibly never accumulate that because you can always spend more than you make. You'll never make $1 million. You just got to stop spending. And I think that comes from people as well. It's like, hey, you got to stop spending your time. You want more time, stop spending it. And in that case, like you said, that intrinsic hourly rate is like, tie that to the time that you waste. And is like, am I going to spend $150 on this task right now? Because if I could monetize this time, I could have $150, but I'm going to not monetize this time because I'm going to watch YouTube and I'm going to watch some other guy who's a contemporary of mine say something that I could say. And I'm intrinsically going to spend $150 to watch someone else make money when I don't. So I think that's the first thing I learned. Like, if you want to start making money, stop spending it. And then I think another big thing I took from I guess I always think about in the back of my head is like Albert Camus in The Outsider says, if death is inevitable, why does it matter how and when? And it's kind of like what we achieve will be a consequence of daily best practices. So it's almost like what we achieve doesn't matter as much as what we do each and every day. So I would rather come into each day with an intention that's a best practice and allow the consequence to be positive or negative as it lies. But the better my practice is daily, the more efficient I am, the result will inherently be more positive for me. But if I focus on some number 6, 9, 12 months from now, that's not going to impact my daily best practices as much as actionable items daily that I check off a list. So am I going to make $1 million? Sure. It's inevitable. I'm not going to spend. I'm going to work every day. It doesn't matter how and when. It matters that every day I have a why that I go behind. So
that's that kind of reminds me, that's like a little Ben Pekulski, it's something that he would say. But definitely, man, I think I actually want to kind of dive into that a little bit. Like there was the kind of not spending money thing, because I think that can be I want to make sure that I think that can get taken in the wrong way as well, right? Like it's like there's a part of me that says you do have to invest money, right, to obviously get it to work for you. So what's your when you say not spending money, right? I think what you're really trying to say is how you spend money, right? And what you spend it on. And you kind of made the correlation to time as well, right? So it's like a lot of what you're talking about there is, how you spend it and what you're spending it on, and the continuous improvement of how you spend it based on that ROI.
Yeah, and I think that comes from too is tying something actionable, tying work to business development, right? And we see people often sit within this developmental stage of business where they're going to do it the best, right? I talk to people all the time about online remote coaching, and they're going to do it better. I'm going to do it the best. I'm going to come out and be an online coach when I have the best system. Well, what I'm going to do better is make money. So you do that, but I'm going to go monetize whatever product it is I have, and I'm going to let it organically improve itself. As my leverage improves, then I feel more pressure on my back to get better. But I think people tie a lot of business development with no action. Like, I'm going to make a website. I'm going to make we see it on Instagram. It's probably the worst culprit. I'm going to have so much content. I'm going to have 1,000 posts, tutorials, pictures of me with my shirt off, client transformation, something else, and 100 posts in. And at no point is there a link or some kind of call to action to give you money for anything. It's like, be careful what you spend your money on. Like, if I spend an hour drafting posts in Instagram, I'm going to execute tomorrow by DMing 100 people saying, let me train you. And when I had no money to pay my rent, I sat on Instagram and scrolled through stories, and every person who squatted, I texted, let me train you. If you had a bar on your back, I was DMing you, let me train you. When am I going to train you? When are you going to bench 3 plates? When are we going to fix your squat? And I sat there. If I spent 100 minutes on Instagram, I was trying to monetize every single minute I spent.
So what's your advice then to somebody who has a limiting self-belief around sending that message? Because that's for me, like, the thing, right? It's like, if you're not asking, it's because there's a limiting self-belief as to why you are not, or why you don't deserve it, in a sense, right? Because, like, 100%, like, that's like a lot of the biggest mistakes people make is around that. They're not asking for that, to monetize.
Yeah, I think it's establishing facts versus stories, right? Before you send that message, you're going to tell yourself a bunch of stories. Why am I a remote coach? Why would this person buy coaching from me? This person's going to tell me to shut up. This person's not going to respond. And at the end of all of those is essentially a binary response of yes or no. Everything's a yes and everything's a no. There is no maybe. There is no next time. So just establishing the fact versus the story is, if you send it and they don't respond, it's the equivalent binary reaction to you never having sent the message. The worst case scenario is nothing happens. And guess what? There's probably nothing happening in your day anyways. Best case scenario, 1 of 1,000 people on Instagram goes, sure, how much? And you make $200. And that's amazing. That's an amazing response. So I think when it comes to limiting belief, I think it's 2 things: establishing facts versus stories, and understanding the fact is, if you inevitably do nothing, nothing will ever happen. And 2, establishing within yourself, like, do you want to do this? Do you want to work on the internet because you want to be able to make exponential amounts of money? And, like, if you have 0 money in your bank account and you go, I want to be a remote coach, if your first goal isn't $10,000, then I highly suggest you get a 9 to 5 that pays benefits, that has a lunchroom, that you go home at 3 p.m. every day, because that's honestly the much better option. Because I think if the base level break even for you in the internet isn't $10,000 a month, I don't think it's the arena in which you participate. Because there's just people moving light years faster than you. Look at me. I can hardly type into Google Sheets. There's people with 6 apps and a YouTube channel, and it's like a reel. I don't even know what that is. And man, if I'm just barely keeping up, if you don't want to make 10K, you'll never keep up. So I think those are 2 conversations you really need to have with yourself.
Yeah, that's a really great way to wrap this up. And I think some great advice. And I think, when it comes to, I actually wrote a post about this yesterday, right? It's like, the only thing ever holding anyone back in business is their limiting self-belief, right? And it's like, if you, like, I kind of look up to Elon, right? Just because of how fucking crazy he is. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how the fuck do you go from, like, founding Tesla and, PayPal to then, like, trying to fucking fly people to Mars? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, for me, that just is the biggest lesson in business. And, he also talks about, I think I forget the quote, but it's like, whatever your 3-year goal is, try to achieve it in fucking 30 minutes or something. It was something wild like that, but it really is a truth, right? It's like, the measuring stick for success these days probably is that 100K. It's like, that's what most people are striving for. And it's like, look, that's the fucking starting point. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if it's not, you're playing with the rest of the field. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you've got to have bigger goals. You've got to have bigger ambitions. Otherwise, you're just not gonna accelerate quick enough to actually get away from the pack. And 20% of the industry will have 80% of the market.
And it's going to become demotivating extremely quickly. You know what I mean? Like because I'm motivated because 10K already happened. And like now I'm motivated by what potential there really is. But to wake up every day and do what you need to do to survive in this industry to make $4,000, I will get any other job if that was the end of the day. You know what I mean? So I think it just comes again down to, like you said, it's that money time relationship and the leverage relationship of like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be the best. If I'm not, I'm going to let somebody else carry the risk.
What the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if I'm not here to fucking be the best, then what am I actually doing this for? Like, that's the harsh reality. It's like, if you're just trying to survive, you only just ever survive, and that's not a fucking life I want to live.
Nah.
Because I've fucking been there, and I've been, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that story I told you about fucking waking up at 3:15. It's like, that is the thing on my shoulders every day that says, if you're not fucking here to be the best, you're gonna live like that for the rest of your life. And it's
Yeah.
like,
That's the thing.
when
And
you,
I don't want to fail on the public stage. You know what I mean? If I want to be mediocre, if I want to be average, I'd like to do it in private. If I'm going to be average in front of everybody else, I'd like to try a hell of a lot harder.
yeah, like I'd fucking delete my Instagram and I'd go get that 9 to 5. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
100%. All right, brother. I want to say a big thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Now let everybody know where they can find you. So, and website, fucking Instagram, all that jazz.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Killian.Hamilton. You can go to the link in my bio. It will show you an access to all my services, including a really user-friendly Calendly to book an appointment to talk directly with me, just like Kyle just has. And from there, you could also go to k2coaching.ca. You can send me a message in the contact sheet if you have extra questions. Otherwise, there is a services page that will outline all the offerings K2 has to offer.
Awesome, brother. Definitely recommend and check it out, guys. And to you, brother, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, now we're going to bring it down a notch. We're going to bring it down a notch. The arena. This is something that, as I said, it's important to me, that you guys, and especially on my, within my life, my goal isn't just to make money, it's to become the best possible person I can for the people around me. So I think developing character both, can reward you within your business, but more importantly, it will reward you with relationships and experiences in life that, will pay tenfold and become memories, which I think is also a really, really important part of development in life, right? So the arena is something that I developed to bring to you, just something towards the end that might give you a bit of an insight that just might change the way your day goes tomorrow, which is important to me. So today I want to talk about identity, and how, literally everything we do in life is about creating an identity that gives others a perception of us, in a sense, right? So every little thing that we do in life, every action, as a business owner, as a brother, as a sister, as a cousin, as a friend, as an individual, whatever we're doing, we're trying to create a particular identity around ourselves. That's a part of, that's built into us as a survival mechanism, because we, tribes is something that, helps us survive. So whenever we're, any action that we take is creating an identity, and that identity is trying to create a particular perception that, will be attractive to another human being, in a sense. I have a little rule that I like to follow, is that I like to really look at internal consequences rather than external consequences. And what do I mean by that is that, and the way I think about it is I want to be extremely conscious of my actions in relation to how that's I want to be really conscious about my actions in relation to the identity that I'm trying to create, right? So whenever I'm acting, I want to question that action internally, and I want to, mindfulness is a really cool skill that I think is probably the most important skill in the world, because I think it can change your trajectory. But it also allows me in the moment to question why I'm doing certain things, and my motive, in a sense. And I think that's really, really important for many people, because I think what most people do, they go through life just focusing simply on the external consequences. So if I lie to Susan, Susan will get upset, right? But nobody focuses on what the lie does to you internally, right? So are the actions that I'm doing, that I'm actioning on a daily basis, or in that moment, to create the identity, to create that perception built on lies and untruth, right? And I think that eventually we have to start questioning ourselves if we are lying, right? Lies continuously have to be protected, right? They, to avoid destruction, to avoid being caught out, they have to continuously be detected. Which means that when it comes time to sever relationships, when it comes time to cover it up, and maybe you have to sever a relationship, that a lot of the time when you go down that rabbit hole of continuously lying, you literally have to sever that relationship, and it will cost you relationships over and over and over again, over and over and over again. And even if it's just the smallest lie continuously, even if it's just something as simply as neglecting taking responsibility, and the knowingness of that, right? When you've done something wrong, or you've upset somebody, or something of that nature, right? And again, this is an internal thing. Nobody outside can make that judgment, right? I want you to start to think about what this does on an individual level, right? And I see people on Instagram all the time doing this. They're lying. They're bending the truth, especially business owners. Business owners will bend the truth on Instagram simply to get leads, and they'll be saying one thing 1 month, and then you look back 6 months later, and they're talking about that period of time, and it's just completely, it's completely untruthful. And you can literally see that by going back in people's feeds, right? But I think if you yell enough of these lies, the effort that it actually takes to maintain that, right? So think about the effort that goes to maintaining that lie over time, and how draining that can be. I think if you want to have sustainable success in business, I think you've got to focus on internal consequences and internal truths. And I think that making sure that it is actions to create an identity, like, that's going to happen anyway. My message here is to be conscious of them. The message here is to be conscious of your actions and make sure that they're built on truths, not untruths, because I think that's what's going to allow you to sustain success over a long period of time, and that's what's going to allow you to stand up when you're challenged. So I just think that it's really important for people out there to understand, and for you guys to understand, that carrying the burden of white lies is unsustainable as a business owner, and you should focus on building character. You should focus on building, substance, in a sense, and that comes from being conscious of your actions and making sure that your need for status doesn't outrun your need for internal truths, and peace of mind, in a sense, because otherwise, the success will be unsustainable, and it will bring you undone. And it's pretty sad, because the bending of the truth on social media has almost become normalized, because that's what social media does. It gives everybody the platform to do so. So my challenge to you is to focus on internal consequences rather than external consequences of your actions, and to be conscious and to practice mindfulness, and just to be mindful, right? To be and to pay attention as to why you're acting a certain way, and autonomously and consciously. So we're going to finish it there, guys. Thanks for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next week. I just want to say a big thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the show. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Feel free to share the episode with your friends and family. And feel free to leave us a review as well. We all the support that we get for the show, and especially now that we've revamped it, we're trying to bring something that's got a little bit more value. It's definitely appreciated. And if you have a question for strategy sessions next week, you want us to take a bit of a deep dive and help you work through some of the roadblocks in your business, or you just want some help creating some winning strategy, you can shoot me an email at kyle@elitevitalitycoaching.com. But I'll leave it there. Until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you on the other side.